Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
You are here for Pathways for Adult Learners Integrating College-Ready Instruction. Our presenter today is Dr. Mary Helen Pira Martinez. So without further ado, I want to welcome our presenter, Dr. Mary Helen P. Martinez. And Dr. Martinez currently serves as a Director of College and Career Readiness at Alamo College District in the Office of the Vice Chancellor of Academic Success. So she's responsible for working with faculty and staff, coordinating college readiness initiatives in the areas of developmental education, co-requisite coursework, student placement, which the Texas Success Initiative Assessment, the TSIA, and many of us are familiar with that, and multiple measures, and adult education and ability to benefit programs. So prior to joining Alamo Colleges, Dr. Martinez's professional background includes extensive grant experience in both fields of developmental and adult education, focusing on professional development and program management. Additionally, she currently serves as an adjunct faculty member of the Adult Professional and Community Education Master's Program at Texas State University and has served as a faculty member for Learning Framework courses at Texas State University and Austin Community College. So while at Austin Community College, she also served as an academic advisor. So Dr. Martinez holds a bachelor's degree in business education, a master's degree in developmental and adult education, and a doctoral degree in developmental education with an emphasis in learning support from Texas State University. So welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Escamilla. I appreciate that. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to those that I know, my colleagues. Thank you for reading all that, Olga. I think it just makes me feel older. But one of my best career moves was to move into adult education many moons ago. And so here I am. I think with experience in adult ed has really helped me with my new experience in higher ed. So as I reflect back on my teaching in adult ed, I remember just a few of our students were interested in going to college. So as we move forward in my new role, I've noticed that more and more adult ed students are interested in enrolling in college and pursuing either a certificate, an associate's degree, because I work at a community college, and many have gone on to transfer to a university or a four-year program. And now, if you didn't know, community colleges offer bachelor's degrees as well in high demand areas. So I can talk more about that if you have any questions about that. But today's workshop is really based on lessons learned as I transition myself from adult ed to higher ed here at Alamo Colleges. So the first question I have before I get started, when you reflect back on your own college experience in the classroom, can you list two things you did a lot of?
Okay, we have reading and writing, listening to lectures and taking notes, group work and facilitation. I was going to say working and partying, but that doesn't seem appropriate with everybody's wonderful, wonderful answers. Sandra Cortez says projects. Yes, thank you, Sandra. Tiffany says listening. Marian says notes, reading, studying, lectures, stressing. Oh, yeah, stressing. Crystal says reading, writing, lots of notes.
What about testing? Did you do a lot of testing?
Interesting. No one said testing. Marion said yes. Tiffany said midterm and finals. Scantron says Mike. What about blue books? Comprehension essays. Only once or twice per semester. Just Jennifer.
Yeah.
Minimum requirements.
Minimum requirements for testing. So lots of reading and writing, lots of testing, lots of assignments. Some were group projects, and we all saw that Note taking was huge. And so you had to kind of listen in order to take the notes, right? So we're going to cover some of that and then ask, how do we incorporate that into our adult ed classroom? But we're going to go on a background on college readiness for adult learners, the why. Why is this important? So we want to create a pathway for our learners to integrate college readiness in adult ed classrooms that promote this seamless transition. Wouldn't that be nice that they just move over to college and know what to expect? Every transition is a challenge, and sometimes moving from either any system, K-12, adult ed, into higher ed, you're navigating a different world. So that's what we'll talk about today. So establishing strategic partnerships, what does that look like? Very intentional on who you partner with so they can help you help your students. Identifying foundational transition skills, we just talked about some. Discussion of successful academic behaviors and what that looks like. Integrating instructional strategies in your classroom. We're going to have a little group activity, a little breakout session, and then we'll wrap it up. So this adult ed to college transition. Recently, the coordinating board posted a report that said 60% of Texas jobs beyond 2020 will require a post-secondary degree. They had worked on some transition grants. I was part of that back in 2009, and they talked about 2020. Well, here it is, 2023. And we do know in the community college space, we have the need in our area as far as the market demand for some sort of post-secondary credential or workforce certificate. Community colleges, according to the Comptroller's Office, estimate the higher pay of those with college or some associate degrees raises the total wages in Texas by over $27 billion a year. We did our own study in San Antonio, and we came up with an associate degree. You should be able to earn at least $10,000 more for your household income. There's what we call credentials of value. There's certificates, there's stackable certificates. They can lead to an associate's degree, starting from certificate level 1, and then moving on to an associate's degree. And again, now we have some bachelor's degrees in our community colleges. So here's a sample, but not limited to credentials of value. The health industry, hot market in San Antonio, Texas. Manufacturing, another one. They have lots of positions open. Welding, construction management, cybersecurity, anything with IT or technology is huge in our area as well. So knowing your labor market and working with the Workforce Commission and identifying those high demand occupations in your area. Can someone think of another industry that is really hurting right now and there's a major staffing shortage? Petrochemical, that's in Southeast Texas. Okay. Anyone else?
Truck drivers, teaching.
We have a shortage of teachers. So our associate's degree in teaching is becoming a very popular program for our students to enroll in. So we start off with certificates, and we have that stackable certificate that leads to teaching. Truck drivers, yes, that's very huge, Sandra. So our program's mirroring what our local community needs. And then we call our local community and region community, and then our state community, because we live in Texas and we want our students to be able to be marketable and transfer to anywhere they want, but understanding that this is a hot market and they can move anywhere in Texas with that associate's degree and be marketable. So one of the interesting articles that I read in this last box that you see here, adult learners really see themselves as workers going to school because they work. That's their primary identity, if you will, going to school, not students who work. So that puts a whole different spin on what we do at community colleges or universities. If anyone's at a university, if our students are seeing themselves as workers going to school, then we need to make sure we have some flexibility, some flexible schedules, the resources or the student supports and the academic supports that surround their area as far as being more flexible with their time. So we have, well,
Tiffany said that school is the lowest priority on their list, first to be sacrificed.
Yes, that is so true. We have so many students that start with us. In our area, we have a program that's looking at the students who have some college hours, but no degree, and we're trying to bring them back. But we have to entice them to come back We have to make it very easy. We in higher ed sometimes have a lot of institutional barriers that don't help our students. So as we move forward, we can think about those barriers. One of the things I want to talk to you about, and I think y'all are just experts in this arena, is how do you increase opportunities for your students to be successful? And that's those intentional strategic partnerships. So it's know your community. We have lots of nonprofits here. We have some local government entities or organizations, the community colleges or universities. We have school districts. Who are you partnering with if you're not in this? Does anyone do any cool things? Like at Austin Community College, we did college for a day, and where we had our adult learners enroll in college, go through all the paperwork, because sometimes our paperwork at a community college is horrible. It's very difficult and challenging. So we had them enroll and we signed them up for 2 classes, and they actually sat in the 2 classes for that day. So it gave that experience to that adult learner on what to expect.
Okay, Dr. Martinez, there's Sandra Cortez says internal partners to the question that you asked. Lorraine Romero says community group who request information for their events. So she partners with them. Dr. Tom says ExxonMobil gives scholarships for process operating and instrumentation jobs at refineries. And Sandra says Adult Education Day, they do, and we bring community partners. Awesome. And then Crystal Day says local ISDs. Tiffany says we use business partners a lot. The mobile workforce job fairs. Kelly says Chamber of Commerce, business development centers. Sandra says partners with Workforce Solutions, definitely. Jennifer says we take students who are on our campus to get their TCC student ID and make sure that they know all the student resources offered by the college. And then Sandra adds that she works with employers. Very good. Thank you all. Great.
So this is very important as you intentionally try to help your student enroll into college and be successful in college. So we have lots of activities and events. We have FAFSA Saturdays where we have staff come help anyone who wants to drop in, fill out their FAFSA. We have college information fairs, which I'm sure everybody does. I like what Sandra said, that we have internal partners, because sometimes within the institutions of higher ed, we have silos. So we have to make sure we're partnering with other departments. And I know those that are at a community college can understand that. So we're trying to break down that silo and trying to help our students make sure they know the process. Keynote speakers are always good to come. But what I find is if you find the right person at your organization that you want to partner with, they will come and help you. They will provide all the information. And we don't know what we don't know. So we didn't know that there's a time limit. Now we have year-round registration. So a student can register at any point and then have classes for 12 months or so, and then going from there. So lots of cool activities. Any other activities or events that you would want to share?
I do like what you said about the opportunity for them to attend the college classes, like a sampler.
And it was very successful, and I gave them a taste of what it would be like. One of the areas in an institution of higher ed that is definitely a barrier to lots of our students is just navigating college. So it's very important for us to think about the foundational skills of how to enroll, what's the application process, what's the registration process, and all that college terminology. You know, what's a GPA? What's FAFSA? What's TASFA? All these acronyms that we use. I think we called it way back when college knowledge, understanding what a semester is. And now we have year-round registration. What does that mean? We have flex schedules. We have the 16-week. We have courses. We have flex schedule 1 is an 8-week course, and then flex schedule 2 is another 8-week course. We have winter mesters, which is a quick and dirty 2-3 week class. We have May mesters. We have all kinds of things. So understanding your college terminology or the certificate programs. What programs do they have? Are these the ones that your students are interested in? So it takes a lot of research and collection of information to bring back to your classroom Or you can make it a project for your students. And this is what we did to inform us of what's going on at Austin Community College and what programs they have. So it's a great research project-based learning for your students in the adult ed classroom. Also, how do you know you're making progress? A lot of us put in the chat that we were only tested maybe twice a semester at midterm and then at the end. Some of the things that happen because I think it was Tiffany who said our adult learners don't prioritize their college or their classes because they have other things going on. If they don't know how they're doing or they don't think they're doing well, they could just drop without even talking to the professor. And that could be one of the solutions, is going to office hours. So the progress that they're making is extremely important. What do you do in your adult ed classroom right now to indicate progress? Okay.
Dr. Tom said we develop student organizations called Student Offered Services under SGA to engage our students in campus life and community activities. I think that's great. And then Lorraine says, I think understanding library services is important. And then Sandra says, through career navigation.
Yes.
So a lot of this happens through career navigation. So
extremely important. The library should be a place. And then the library services. At a community college as well, we have a lot of student support services, or wraparound services, what we call, to help our students ensure they don't drop out. For example, we have student advocacy centers at each college campus. And what they do, they have emergency aid. Say someone had a flat tire and needs to change that tire, but it's going to cost them money, or they need to pay this month's electric bill and they don't, they have to go back to work and drop a class or what have you. So we have emergency aid, and then we have lots and lots of resources for our student parents. And if you haven't heard, the law has changed, and we are institutions of higher ed. It is now in Title IX that we support our student parents as well. And so we have diapers and formula, what have you, at our advocacy centers. We also have the food banks and what have you. So lots of wraparound services, because a lot of the time, it's not really the academic part, it's the life that happens. And that's why most of them drop out. And then what does it mean when they complete? So what does this look like in your classroom?
So we had a couple of other responses that came through. One of them from Tiffany Johnson, and she said AEL uses informal check-ins daily, or daily check-ins. She said, but I don't see that with any other of the college training courses, keeping them on track. And then Lorraine says some of our campuses offer a small food pantry also. So thank y'all for your contributions.
So if they're used to the daily check-ins, or they come from K-12 where somebody's always asking them, did you get your work in? Okay, good. Here's your grade and what have you. And they transition into college where no one's checking in on them. It's a tough transition. Any thoughts on how we can help them?
One of my thoughts is, and you brought up a good point about that, because our students haven't been in school for potentially many years. And adult education, do we really have our students do homework? So are they really used to that? We do the syllabus to tell them what we're going to cover, so they're kind of familiar with that piece. But do adult ed programs have students be responsible for homework?
That's a great point.
Maybe distance learning is kind of like homework, but how much are they sticking to that piece too? Sandra Cortez says, Burrito College does. They do projects outside of the classroom. And then Tiffany says, we spend a lesson on our pre-college prep explaining the weighted syllabus and how important the exams were. I know our students want or need to know if they are doing the right things. Jennifer says, our instructors communicate with students during the week via the text and email. Also, they assign assignments outside of class. This is great because again, as Mary Helen mentioned, how are we getting our students prepared for what's to come?
One of the huge barriers is our testing into college. Anyone familiar with the Texas Success Initiative? I put 2013. That's not really true. It started around 2009. And the rule, it was a Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board rule, said we will help students in their gateway courses, math and English, to have a solid opportunity as they move through their college academic courses. So we know that reading and writing and math are probably the foundational skills to all success in your college courses. So they said we need to help them. But by helping them, they meant we need to make sure they're at a certain level so we can get that remediation if they need it, or just move on to their credit course. And so thus, that's the rule, TSI. And TSIA, Texas Success Initiative Assessment, and which we call TSI anyway, it's a placement test. So it's very important that we know about this, because this is the test that'll place our students in credit, or it'll place our students with non-credit courses that need remediation in reading, writing, or math. And reading and writing are combined. So we had our first, I don't know if you recall, maybe you're not as old as me, but way back when, we had all community colleges and universities using ENI assessment for placement. Not entry or acceptance, but for placement purposes, like where do you go based on your academic level that you're showing now. So not a pass-fail. And this is not a pass-fail test. It's just where are you placing? So in 2013, they said all colleges and universities in the state of Texas, they being the coordinating board, THECB, will use one common assessment, and they called it the Texas Success Initiative Assessment, or TSIA, which is commonly known as TSI now. I hope you're keeping up with me on that, okay? There'll be a test at the end. So in 2013, they stopped all other tests, and now all colleges and universities from 2013, 2021 use the first version. Now we're at version number 2 or 2.0 or TSIA 2, whatever you folks refer to. We have a new assessment. So just for your information, this is really, really important because it is a huge barrier for our students as they enroll in higher ed. In 2021, this was changed. And so now we have TSIA 2.0 or 2, and it was effective January 11, 2021. This link right here is the Texas Administrative Code, and it'll tell you all about it. We now have version 2.0, reading, writing, and math. So the test has math and then English language arts and reading, which they call ELAR, the same as in K-12. They call it ELAR. They have a diagnostic test. So it depends. If you don't pass these 20 items, then you go on to more items and you have a diagnostic test. And that's how that works. And there's an essay question. Now, the diagnostic levels, they're the adult education functioning levels that the national standards have. So levels 1 through 6. So here's actual benchmarks. This is what we look at as students' place. So if they score here or here for math, they're placed in a college algebra, 13-14, or statistics or contemporary math without any academic support. If they don't score, or if they score below the 950, they're placed into a co-requisite course, which is an academic course, the college algebra or any of the maths that I said, then with an academic support, either a lab or what have you. And that's what we call developmental ed. So anyway, the diagnostic level I just wanted to show you is the adult basic functioning levels, ranges 1 through 6. In the first version, they called it adult basic ed level, and now they call it the diagnostic level. And so scores for both the TSIA and the TSIA 2 are valid for 5 years from date of testing. This is one of the areas that we need the most help in. So moving on, in May of 2021, I believe it was, there was a newly approved TSI exemption. So everyone is placed using the TSIA unless you have an exemption. And the exemption is a high score in the ACT, SAT, or the STAR if you're coming from K-12, or now the GED. So the GED, reasoning through language arts, is a 165 or greater as far as math.
Lorraine asked, do we accept the TSIA diagnostic scores or still test with TABE?
TABE, we can't use TSIA yet. Rare that we see that high score. Okay, but if they had that high score academically, they could go right into credit. And according to the correlations, it should be successful. What do you think we should do in the classroom if this is high, if our goal is here? Or say a student says, I want to go to college.
Increase the rigor?
Yeah, probably. Or focus more on reading, writing, and math, right? I taught a transition class for many years, and it just seemed that we had to always focus on reading, writing, and math, and speaking, of course, because you have to do presentations in order to get our students to the level they want it to be at. So I think a project-based initiative or project within your classroom could work. But we'll get to more ideas from you, see what else will work.
Okay, we had a comment from Crystal. I had 2 students pass with 170 and 176, so I concentrated on writing with those students. Very good. And Sandra says tutoring also.
Yes, tutoring is huge.
And
Yeah.
then Ann Savino says the Higher Education Coordinating Board, does it have the TSIA being reviewed by NRS for acceptance as an AL instrument? They need 1 more year of data before approval can be given, but it's been submitted for acceptance and it's under review.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anne. So there's some foundational skills that we could help with as far as transitioning to college, and you talked about it. But we have a document called the Texas College and Career Readiness Standards from the Coordinating Board. And I think the last revision was 2018, but they have the academic under cross-disciplinary standards. These are entry-level skills that students must possess in order to be successful in college, according to these standards. They're cognitive skills, reasoning, problem solving, academic behaviors, so work habits, and academic integrity. The foundational skills of reading, writing, data analysis, use of technology, and conducting research. Again, that's why I think that project-based learning applies. I really like the way we can structure that as far as teaching. But there's also a lot of non-academic needs that the majority of our students need. And that's a community, maybe a partner in crime or a cohort. Organizations, a sense of belonging is huge at a college campus. So how do they even enroll in an organization or even try to be a participant when they have so many other competing demands? Financial assistance, our students drop out because of financial assistance or lack of. And then there's that social emotional well-being, that self-regulation. Can they monitor themselves in order to get through the entire semester or the 8 weeks? And it's been proven our adult learners do well actually in an 8-week course versus a 16-week course. Also, we talked about this earlier, just the additional resources, the wraparound services that our students may need. And this is all our students: counseling, food banks, housing, childcare, transportation, et cetera, et cetera. So our colleges have been working really hard on those student advocacy centers in providing either the service themselves or a referral. We have food pop-ups all the time. We have food available to anyone who wants to walk in. I mean, you know, snacks, not a homemade meal, but we have some food that they can eat. We also have a collaboration. One of our strategic partners was with the food bank, but we also have one with VIA, which is our transportation. And so students can ride free to anywhere because of our partnership. So we talked about these academic behaviors and learning to learn. We are born to learn, and that's actually a name of a book, Born to Learn. So our brains like the stimulation of learning something new, but it takes some sort of organization or some sort of game plan, if you will, on learning how to learn. So just getting organized, getting yourself organized, understanding that this is a course and all the, I think it was Tiffany said, you know, where the exams are on your syllabus, understanding the calendar and time management. How do you summarize or paraphrase in your own words what you're reading or what you're listening to as far as the lecture? And someone said earlier, that's what we do a lot of in the classroom. So in our adult ed classrooms, do you have that opportunity? I think it's Harvard has lectures that you can turn on and have students try their hand at note-taking or summarizing. There's also learning to learn is the mnemonic devices. Anyone know what that is?
I just did one earlier today, like letters, like the letters.
Like for learning the math order.
PEMDAS. Is
Yeah.
it PEMDAS? I'm making that up.
Yeah.
Oh, someone said learning strategies and like Roy G. Biv. Thank you, Tiffany.
Like Roy G. Biv, yeah, like that. And it helps you remember. What's a PIM for math? What was it? PIMDAS? Is that what you said? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally.
What about like the one for the planets? But that's very K through 12-ish.
No, that's okay. You can make them up. And that's what I think Kelly's saying we use, to use them all the time. You can actually make them up.
Anne says every good boy deserves favor for piano.
Yep. One course that I had, I think it was a study skills course that I was facilitating. I had them make them up, and the sillier the better, because you actually remember. Because it's really hard to remember all that information when you have so many competing demands on your plate. So that's just a fun way. Also, the test taking skills. Some students have a fear of testing. And so getting them, the TSIA is not a time test. So just getting them used to testing and testing on the content that you just covered, for example, or that was covered in a textbook would help. Study groups, someone mentioned earlier, group work, very, very important. I know some people do not like group work. It's how we work, it's how we study, and we learn from each other. The research skills, I know Google is a research tool that some people use, but there's Google Scholar too to elevate the rigor. And then there's lots of other tools you can use. You can partner with your university or community college library. I love that idea about learning more about your library services because they can help you with the research goals. Using technology, using the Excel for your math at Project Base, using an Excel spreadsheet to state your case on what you're finding and that whole data analysis. And then, of course, dealing with distractions or procrastination, we go back to that self-regulation, which is a total workshop on its own. But these are just academic behaviors that would really help us in the classroom. So the instructional strategies, what do you do in your classroom or reading, writing, and math? One of the areas, let me just go to math first, because math is an area of focus for all our community colleges right now or in higher ed that our students are definitely struggling with. One of the things that I hear from our math faculty is that our students don't come in with a solid foundation of the 4 operations of math or their fractions or their decimals or their rates, ratios, or algebra. So giving them that solid foundation is something we can do in the adult ed classroom or in our transition courses. And then writing based on evidence-based analysis. I know in our classrooms, we do a lot of journal writing or more of the feel good, but what about when we ask our students to write based on what the evidence is showing or it's a research project? And then types of texts, we can always elevate that. At one point, I always said, well, it doesn't matter what our student is reading as long as they're reading. Well, it does matter because we have to increase or elevate and go to an academic type of language that they're reading and seeing so they won't be so culture shock when they get into our classrooms in higher ed. So given all this, let's take a few minutes, maybe just 5 minutes, and take an academic or a non-academic activity or strategy that you want to use in the classroom. And then what would that look like to help your students transition? Okay.
This is Jennifer. I was in group 5 with Crystal and Jody, and Crystal made a really good point. She works with students who have degrees from other countries, the ESLP students, and she mentioned that a lot of them didn't really have a choice in their career pathway in their home country. So maybe, that's a conversation to have with them when they're in your class as far as what do they want to do. And they're perfectly capable of enrolling in our higher education institutions. It's just helping them find the pathway that they really are passionate about and want to follow.
An excellent point. Just getting to that goal setting and really talking to the student. And that helps motivate them and keep them on track as well. One more share.
So Tiffany, Lorraine, and Cheryl, we spoke about inclusivity, where since we're on a community college, our students might not still 100%, but they're more accepted. They participate in all the events that are provided by the college, and in Tiffany's case as well.
We probably have time for one more.
Go ahead, Tiffany.
Campus tours are always a good thing. We did those before we got on campus, and that really makes your students understand they're real college students when they see that. And one thing I didn't say, we ordered folders, simple little portfolio folders is what they're called. And they have our Victoria College mascot and they have the colors, but it's specifically adult education. So it has our pre-printed information on the back and all that good stuff. And so when the students attend an orientation, they get one. And I've seen them walking across campus carrying it. They're like part of the college community. And that's hard because most of our campus is a transfer or commuter campus. So without dorms, there's not that sense of community like you want. So I think that's college-wide too. But if you can get your adult ed students to connect at social events and make them feel more included with the other college students, I think that's a big thing. Lyceum speakers and events, like boy, they line up for some free tacos.
Thank you, Tiffany, for that. It's those little things that make a big difference.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Workforce Wednesday.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCAL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.